These days, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, and with that, we sent away good jobs and our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make all kinds of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs in towns and cities across the country. And jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 4 of the Beautifully Broken podcast. I missed you so much. I really did. And I am excited to jump into this very exciting topic. It's going to be a 2-part series with upgraded formulas. And we are going to talk about minerals, mineralization of the body. We're going to look at our big macro minerals like calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. We're going to look at their relationship to each other and how they can have an effect on the body's overall wellness, vitality, and ability to store energy and to function just like a battery. This is one company that I've absolutely fallen in love with, and their HTMA test, which allows you to send some hair away from home and get a consultation with a specialist, is something that I was so enchanted with, I had my mom do it. So that should tell you something about my belief in this product and their company. So I have a very special code for you to do your own HTMA test and free consultation. And the code is Freddie10, all capital letters, Freddie10, and that's upgraded formulas. But we're going to dig in. We're going to sit down with Barton Scott and upgraded formulas. And we're going to have a follow-up episode where we look at Freddie's test results. And I get really vulnerable, what's under the hood. And I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we explore the survivor's journey, practitioners making a difference, and the therapeutic treatments and transformational technology that allow the body to heal itself. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. We are in Season 4, which we're in the process of recording right now, and I'm so excited to kick this off with somebody I respect in the biohacking space and an incredible guest with an incredible platform, delivering some of the best mineral and high-end nutraceutical supplements in the market. My friend Barton is here from Upgraded Formulas. Barton, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I think we first connected. Honestly, when we first connected in the car.
Yeah.
When I was listening to the Ben Greenfield podcast, and I was listening to you talk about your specific formulation of minerals and why they're different than the other things on the market. So it's a really treat. It's a huge treat, a treat on trick or treat, almost Halloween on Sunday to have you here on the podcast.
Yeah, here we are Saturday mid-morning, which is, just a great time to just kind of have enough time to really go into things, which is cool. So yeah, we will we'll definitely cover things in this episode that you haven't heard before. So you may want to hit that rewind button a couple times. Just saying.
So for our audience at home and for me, how did you find your way into health and wellness? Why are you involved in creating we'll call it a next level supplement company and ways to quantify what's happening in the terrain of the body? What got you started?
Got me started, like a lot of you listening, probably had a health challenge that was just staring me in the face. And I was in my mid-20s and I thought, damn, I should feel good right now, if ever. I'd finished college. I studied chemical engineering. Got a minor in chemistry, a minor in math, a lot of physics. And so my brain worked really well at one point. But about 2 years later, it just was not working. And I knew I was about to lose my job. And then what from there, I couldn't even imagine. But I knew it was going to be really, really bad. Pictured myself just homeless and living under a bridge somewhere if I didn't figure this out. And I also at the same time thought I wasn't naive enough to think that, oh, this is only my problem. I was thinking, God, if I am eating a pretty good diet, know a ton about nutrition already. I'd been a wrestler and I'd played a bunch of different sports and was go from an early age. But particularly because of wrestling, where you're watching how much you're consuming, you are going full out and you're not just like on a bike or kind of going until you're exhausted. Someone else is pushing on you, and to excel at a really high level in that sport, I mean, it's just a masochistic level of training and really self-induced hypothyroidism looking back on it. So I get through that. And of course, heavy metals accumulate more easily whenever you have mineral deficiencies. And just for anyone listening, we're talking about minerals, specifically things like chromium, manganese, lithium, even, of course, magnesium, of course, calcium, of course, potassium, other things like phosphorus, boron. And we could talk about what each one of these does in the body and how they interact and how some are synergistic and how some are antagonistic. But spent a lot of money in testing around this time, and I realized, oh my God, I am not absorbing. I have chronically low levels, in other words, after looking at this hair analysis about 10 years ago. And I've been taking several of these, like 4 or 5 of these supplements that should have this nutrient. I shouldn't have low levels, in other words. Mm-hmm. And I'm taking brands that are reputable. So from a quality standpoint, that's not the issue. I know it's not. And I sent some off to get tested. I did all sorts of things. And that kind of started, I re-engaged my chemical engineering mind around, all right, well, instead of helping some company make, that's worth $1 trillion, make even more money, which is what chemical engineers normally do. You take a process, like usually an industrial process, and you make it more efficient, make the output cleaner, higher, more absorbable, more favorable in some way. And that could be things like creating gasoline or et cetera. So anyway, one area, though, of focus in college was nanotechnology. And it was this emerging field I was super interested in. I remember thinking, God, this is going to change the world. It's going to change medicine. It's certainly going to change nutrition. And I had some family that worked in compounding pharmacy. I kind of knew some of the back end of that. A lot of people in my family were entrepreneurs. So I felt confident in getting the support and the guidance and the sort of mentorship that I needed to build a great company. And then I started to realize, well, it's specifically the thing that we have to do is get the minerals into the red blood cells. And if we do that, they will transport it throughout the body happily. Because ultimately, when we digest a meal, and to the extent that our food has actual nutrients in it, because the soil is so depleted, which is one of the concerning things we can talk about and what to do about it, then that food gets broken down, it gets into your red blood cells, and ultimately used and utilized by your organs to show externally that you have good skin or hair or fingernails or something. And these are just like beauty indicators or indicators of how we're doing internally. And that's great. So it's a bit of a both longevity brand, anti-aging approach. And, around the same time, I was helping a number of different people, including my mother. And we were super close as a family. They had raised me like peers. They had 2 daughters, had a big gap, had me. So I grew up kind of like an only child and had the benefit of all their wisdom in the older age, but I was always thinking about longevity because of that, being born to older parents. I'm sure some people listening can relate. And I didn't want to lose my best friends. That was scarier to me around this time. It's my biggest fear, for sure, bar none. More so than even losing my life, which when you think about it, it doesn't really make sense. If you're dead, then you can't experience anything. So, but nevertheless, this was the biggest fear. And I saw how badly modern medicine treated her and how she went from one medication to another and just quickly went from, all right, there's a problem. All right, medication. Now you're detoxing and dealing with the medication and also trying to heal. And how that just so clearly didn't work because, as a friend said that went through medical school, he said, we learned in medical school that with medicine, we never reverse a disease, ever. We never have. So that really stuck with me. And I started to really think about longevity, and she passed away really suddenly. And that trauma was unsettling in that this wasn't just a family thing. This was a systems approach that was clearly broken. And I started to think about what healthy people have and do research. And I found some research that very clearly shows that when people are in a disease state, they have low mineral levels, they have deficiencies, and they have huge variances in ratios. So one mineral to another. And that I realized as I learned more and more about this particular test we'll talk about today, and sorry for this long monologue, but it kind of all flows together, is adrenal function, thyroid function, blood sugar, all of these things are so key. And we see that in hair, and we see that in ratios of certain minerals in hair. And we see detractors from that in heavy metals and the relationships of minerals to heavy metals. So these are quite literally the elements that rule our world, that build our world, that rule our bodies. And we have to be testing if we're going to have any shot of being optimal, because a lot of the cool biohacks that are gadgets, they help heal us, but they also increase our burn rate of minerals, right? Because, a lot of people know about mitochondria and increasing that health, right? Well, what does that require? I'll just ask you that. Just pause, stop for a sec, think, what does that require? Well, it requires magnesium. It requires oxygen. It requires a number of different things to produce ATP or energy in raw form. So to the extent that we want to heal and detox and we get in the sauna, and we sweat it out, well, we need to replenish that. That's what I wasn't doing when I was in all the sports. So, but particularly wrestling, where you're sweating so much, like 8 pounds of water weight in a practice. So all of this kind of fits together in this cohesive sort of approach, which I feel is a fundamental nutrition approach and also biohacking, because now we have these products, using my background, that are specific to us and absorb super well. So we know kind of what you're missing, and we targetedly approach what you're missing with supplements that really work.
Yeah. I mean,
and foods.
Yeah. Also, you also have permission to always do monologues on the podcast, because people listen to me talk all the time. So this is your monologue stage. So I love it. I run with it. I mean, I just want to say that this has always been it's been the building block of everything I built on. I remember one of the first tests I ever ran was an HTMA test. I'm going to say it was like a Great Plains or a Genova, but I remember the ratios being all over the place. I have it. I actually want to show it to you. And it was scary. It was very scary to look at. I mean, everything was off. There was tons of mercury in my system. And I remember somebody said to me, they're like, well, that's hair. It's not your blood. And so for the people at home that want to because I did think about that too. I was like, well, did my body park minerals and toxic elements just in my hair? From my understanding or explanation to people is well, listen, hair is just very current biological cellular activity, right? It's a collection of cells. So it's all everywhere. But give me your explainer why we can get information from the hair specifically.
So there's a bunch of different very serious things that we use hair for, right? We use hair at crime scenes to understand DNA, and that we'll find hair years later, right? It's stable. It's really good. Blood would have washed away or decomposed, much faster. And when we take blood, so always comparing it to the next best thing that we can do, blood or even urine, is days or hours worth of data. And there's a time and place for some of that. But when it comes to minerals and heavy metals, hair is the way to go. And our particular focus, primarily, if we only had to choose one, would be minerals, because we want to know what your deficiencies are and we want to reverse your deficiencies so that as you start to push out, or as you start to raise certain levels, you start to push out certain heavy metals, right? Raise certain mineral levels, push out certain heavy metals, right? And that's a mind-blowing concept that most people haven't heard before. And it's really, really important to understand. So hair is about a month's worth of data if it's an inch long.
Okay.
And it could be even less than that. If you have a 1/4 inch or so, that's fine. You want it close to the scalp. And we have videos on the site to show how to do that. You could go to your barber. You could have, a friend, a lover, someone help you with it.
Yeah.
Or you could do it yourself. I've done all of those. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. I'm happy to go into more detail though.
We'll go back to just you said balancing minerals can help push out heavy metals. So I'd like to have a visual concept on that. Like, what does that mean? Is the mineral removing a metal from a receptor site that would normally be a binding site?
Right. So what's really interesting is that, we have these things like selenium and mercury, and, selenium pushes out mercury, the zinc pushes out mercury, even sulfur. By raising sulfur levels, you can push out mercury. You look at iron will push out mercury. Other things like cadmium is affected by sulfur, calcium's affected by lead. All these relationships are really important, and we look at all of those in our toxic ratio section of our hair analysis. So it's really important, really key to understand.
Yeah. And I always offer this to people, from my background of going through like Lyme and mold. This is often something when you get a really good practitioner and they're going to look at the whole terrain. We're not just going to look at like the overwhelm of a biotoxin or a mycotoxin from Lyme and mold. We're going to look at, again, these building blocks that have been displaced. And from my experience, it's been so much more about, I've created this perfect fishbowl for disease, as opposed to saying, as opposed to saying, well, the all great creator has smited me with infection. I've actually made some life choices, some decisions, mental, emotional, economical, which has allowed this to come into the field. And I hope that's not too woo for people, but that's
how it happens.
Unless I had seen so many people shift these things and start to improve their health, then I wouldn't be so adamant about it. So it's been something that's been really valuable for me.
Oh, it's beautifully said and true. And we could go into why all of that is, certainly. And there's so many directions we can take it from here.
Yeah, I went in through a period, and I've mentioned this before, I've never really had great insomnia. I will say when I started to get really ill with Lyme after cancer, my sleep really went to shit.
I bet.
I became a person who could lay down and sleep anywhere, to somebody that was like, I just never felt like I was going into the deep sleep. My dreams diminished. And that's been something I've really fought for over time.
So to speak directly to that sounds like a magnesium deficiency for a couple different reasons. You need magnesium to make melatonin. You also need it to make serotonin and do about at least 800 things in the body now that we know of, just that one mineral. But just taking a bunch of magnesium, if you have low calcium levels, is also not the answer. And also, just side note, just never only supplement calcium without knowing your levels. It's most likely that you don't need it compared or relative to things like magnesium. You take calcium in the presence of magnesium. So Lyme, mold, things like this. Why is it that some people can be less affected and are less affected by these things than others? That's something I would pose to anyone listening. Why do you think that is? Well, similar to heavy metals, when your cells, and in this case, we'll speak to this, trouble sleeping, energy, not feeling like you slept deeply, you need magnesium to power the mitochondria and to make energy. And when you have all the minerals that you need, you're able to make, in that, let's say, perfect scenario, you have all the things that you need to make energy. And then if you can focus on the particulars like heavy metals, also, sure, microplastics, things like that. But believe me, heavy metals are far and away the most toxic thing that you can have in your body. Like lead is super, super toxic, and yet mercury is 1,000 times more toxic than lead. So, just small amounts of this stuff make you terribly sick. So anyone sick, right? So we can defend cellularly, or we get health when we have all the things to make energy at a cellular level, right? And we do our other biohacks, but we supply the minerals, and then we also work to remove more and more heavy metals. And that's that eventual sort of spiral upward. If we keep testing and we keep supplementing, we keep eating foods that we are in line with in terms of our deficiencies and also our overloads too, right? So again, if you're eating a lot of green leafy vegetables and you have a really high calcium level right now, that's not a great thing. So you wonder why people that suddenly make shifts in their diet feel a lot better. Usually it's things like that. And I'm not a fan of really any diet for a super long time. I think just in general, we should be bouncing between things, right? So, people that want to go carnivore, for example. Well, in this example, not that this is a great solution for everyone or for any amount of time, but let's say you go carnivore for 4 days. Well, you do that. And what'd you do? When you're like, oh, I feel better. Well, you increased your iron levels, you reduced your calcium levels, you probably increased your magnesium ratio to calcium. A lot of these things, you probably boosted testosterone, different things like that. You also just thought about food less, so you're more satiated. And we can go through every diet, and I could propose different benefits and go this is why someone's feeling well. The thing is that then we attach, unfortunately, identity, because we start to tell friends how good we feel, and it's revelatory. And then we go this cognitive bias of commitment and consistency, where I've told you how good this is about this new diet that I'm trying, where I'm eating only wheat thins, and and then damn, it stops working a week or 3 weeks or a month or 3 months later, and you're like, it's not the diet. I just got to try. I got to eat more wheat than or less or a different time of day. It's no, it's not. It's clearly, think about it. Think about all these elements again, to go back to that big macro perspective and go, what am I missing? Knowing now with clarity from everything we just talked about that your body will not run optimally if it doesn't have a balanced ratio and portfolio, so to speak, a whole 128 box set of crayons of all the things that you need. You need those things. It's fundamental baseline nutrition. And the problem is they're just not very easy to absorb.
Yeah, I remember hearing and being very attracted to the stories. Again, to take it back to me, because it's my podcast. Yeah. One of the areas that was attacked in my body from Lyme immediately was my hands and my feet. The small joints in the hand. So, and there is, I could go into the biological reasons of what type of sugar proteins are left behind as spirochetes burrow into the joints. And there have been so many anecdotal reports of people having a dramatic reduction in hand and foot pain from going on a carnivore diet. So I remember
calcium deposition in the joints is a big thing. When you have too much calcium, it deposits in the joints and you feel stiff, achy, inflamed. Not good. Yeah.
I mean, and I remember hearing it. And then, there was something in me that said, these stories are incredible. There was something in my body that said, that's not a long-term sustainable solution. So I never really went down the road. It was I was sort of dancing with it for a little bit. It didn't resonate at the end of the day. But I could come up in my head. I'm like, well, they're not eating lectins. There's none of the proteins that are similar in nature to gluten that are in the diet anymore. From all the offenders, maybe you're not cooking your kale down enough, or beans or lectins are still there, a protein that's similar to gluten in nature that's not being digested. So it's usually the absence of, and from what I've read, we can look at all the diets and we really can't pick out one and say, it's this one on the pedestal. It's really what you're saying. It's are the raw materials there? And what is the energy behind the action, right?
Yeah. think about it this way. What is your food breaking down to? Really think about that. Because your opinions on anything any of us eat, it breaks down to minerals, amino acids, hormones. There's so much talk about hormones right now. I love hearing it. And yet people are forgetting the building blocks. They're not forgetting. Most people don't know, and that it's just an observation. They just don't know what the building blocks of hormones are. I need to put a quiz together. And that would be one of the first questions. So what are they? If you're listening to this right now, think to yourself, what are the building blocks of hormones? Well, they're minerals. Surprise, surprise. Not vitamins for the most part, but the most key part are minerals and amino acids. So, and fats, like fats and minerals together, those are the biggest two building blocks that you need to have hormones. And that's part of the reason why some people do talk about keto, start to feel better, really, really good for a long time with keto. And then maybe they get the electrolyte imbalance or other just mineral imbalances, and they start to feel terrible. And they go, God, it's not the diet. The diet helped me so much. And it's the fact that they're totally guessing. In each one of these cases, everyone has something in common, which is they're totally guessing at the sort of crime scene of what's happening in their body, of just like the body's trying to help and do the things, and you're just like not listening because you're not testing, and you're trying to just mentally, intellectually hurdle through this without supporting your intuition, supporting your intellect with tests that are actionable. There's just a lot of tests that aren't super actionable, I find, or they're super expensive, or both. It's really interesting to me. But there's a number of different ways that we can look at supporting all these issues, with minerals. That's why I come back to, I won't use silver very often, very super rarely actually, but you could nebulize it and breathe it in. You can put it in a spray and spray it into your nostrils. There's mold sometimes in people's nasal cavities. And, so like targeted things. So we're talking about mycotoxins that end up in the blood because maybe they're there. There's just, the world's elemental. So we need to be measuring these things, like end of story, mic drop. Like we'll just explain from there why that is and but that's like the thing to come back to.
I love it. I'm so excited. I hit a huge download of an idea while you were talking. Cause I'm always interested in building this for people. I'm really interested with empowering and educating people. What are the 4 or 5 things we could do before we ever walked into our $2,000, $3,000 functional medicine clinic, right? Very possibly change your state before you even, and show up with just a more malleable bioterrain for that doctor to work with. Minerals, hands down, it's at the top of my list. And with that, luckily, I submitted some hair to Barton, as we mentioned at the beginning, and we have some data. We have some data back from Freddie that we can kind of scroll through here in real time. Now, what I'll do is with this podcast, I will put, because I'm very transparent, I will put this up as a PDF and I'll link this in the show notes. So you guys, and we can make some notes on what we're seeing here, why we're seeing it, because we won't have the visual on a podcast, but I would like to talk through this test, my laboratory number 1625698, and see what we see, metabolic type, slow. I want to know what this all means. So if we can get into this a little bit, beautiful. Where would you start somebody? Because just to be clear, I bought a test, but I also, on upgraded formulas, I bought a consultation. So I don't just get data back. I'm going to get somebody to explain this for me and give me some action steps.
Yes. So they will walk you through the best supplements to choose, the dosages of those, the foods you should stop or eat more of, particularly, and then occasionally things that, hey, you want to take a break on until we retest. And we'll retest at your convenience, either in 60 days or 90 days. I find 90 days is a good window, and you can do that only 4 times a year and get a huge insight, pivotal insight. Do that for a couple of years and see how drastically, it's unrecognizable after probably 3 tests and following the prescription, because the products work, the testing works, The consultations are like increasing your understanding no matter where you are. I can take any biohacker, any health professional in the world, show them levels. If they're not measuring this, like in the episode that you heard me on initially with Ben Greenfield, Ben obviously knows a ton, like about as much as anyone alive. And we still had things to improve on his test.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it. We did the same thing with him where I reviewed his tests like we're about to talk about right now. And I gave some suggestions. And, he had like arsenic, and he had some things that were just like very high. I'm like, hey, you're over supplementing some of these things. So this is a pathway to save you money, which also saves you time. So that time that you would spend to take the hair test, hey, it's still less time than going and get your blood drawn. You don't need a needle. And imagine the time you spend when you save when you're not opening as many supplements, especially when you don't know if you actually need them. And worst case scenario, you're high in it and you're still taking it and you're paying to make your health worse in that case of not testing. So this is why we own the trademark test, don't guess.
Beautiful. So with that, where should we start here?
So there's some really good things to dig into. So the magnesium level is actually elevated, which shows me most likely that you have a B6 deficiency, not that you have too much magnesium. So this is where it comes into, you'll hear us discuss some things here where it's not straight away, where it's like, oh, hey, you're low or high in this thing. Take these 4 things that you're low in. It's not that simple. I would say at the top of page 2, we have this ratio section and some really good news. The one thing that I look at first there is sodium to potassium. Yours is almost ideal, Freddie. Way to go.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. So that is basically frequency. That is just like healthiness. That is vitality. And that if that is really low, and I've seen people that are very, very fit, beautiful, any age, young, old, have a low number, I can guarantee that they're experiencing or will soon experience emotional disturbance equivalent to or similar in appearance of bipolar disorder or related things that you just make them both tough to be around and unpredictable, and just this is how nutrition influences personality.
Did you ever think about running potential dating partners through an HTMA test first?
Yes.
Wait, can we build a dating site based off upgraded formulas?
Yes. And I've literally had a girlfriend a while back that she did her test, and I could tell just because I've done so many of these tests that I can tell when I speak to someone usually just by the signature of their voice, because I did so many phone consultations before I had a team of nutritionists doing it for the company, by how much energy someone has, by how the things they do and don't do. Like there's just a huge like decision matrix in my mind somewhere of all of this. And I was thinking, God, I bet she's really low in this. She came back at like a 1.35, which is really, really low. And wow, she was gone in a week. She just like one thing, like it's usually the person can't handle stress. So if things are super good and you're like really, really being only a super positive force in their life, maybe it'll stay. Even then, usually not. I remember her car got towed and she was just like so stressed, and I was like working and I was like, well, it's going to be okay or whatever. And she just like freaked out, couldn't handle it. Just thought like I was, evil for not dropping all my meetings I had coming across town I was like, it's a $5-10 Uber ride. I'd love to be there, but like, I can't. That literally like that ended the relationship. You see what I mean? Like, like really small things, again, to be completely transparent. So, So, it's like, wow. And I just felt bad for her, also for us, because there's just no chance chemically that it could work. But this is something I'm writing about in my book that will hopefully come out in 2022, which is how nutrition becomes personality. I could take her or anyone else that had that number and our nutritionists at Upgraded Formulas can do this too in consultations and give you a clear roadmap to improve that. that is not fixed. And I think that is the most hope-inspiring thing that I teach people is you aren't your circumstance as it appears on the page here. And not knowing what's on the page by not testing is a huge mistake, frankly, or a huge opportunity lost, because let's say she had done that test 6 months before. Whether the relationship was me or someone else, she could have had a much better experience, avoided all this felt sense of trauma, right? Because the same thing can happen to one person and to another. And one person like just literally moves about that same day at like, okay, that wasn't fortunate, but another person has trauma around it. And I would say that is largely because of this sort of roll-off effect, like you could call it. Like if you had coconut oil and it just like a drop of water drops on your shoulder, it just rolls off, right? Yeah. Versus, and you have this like protection from minerals, in this case, sodium and potassium. Going super deep on this one. But anyway, we can kind of zoom out and talk about the others. But, it's your resilience. It really is resilience and vitality.
Awesome. I love that. So I'm a 4.30 on that. So we'll give that one a heart. That's great.
Oh, yeah. So this one would be calcium to phosphorus. And that's actually metabolism. That's really good. And we can talk about that one next. I actually jumped to the second one right here.
Got it. Beautiful.
Yeah, 2.27.
Got it. So that's in range.
That's really good. Yeah, you want to be right through that line.
Perfect.
Really, really good. So yeah, metabolism, you're really solid there. In this case, your phosphorus levels individually look really good. And phosphorus is linked to intelligence. So, hey, if you're listening to Freddie on the regular, it's because he's a smart guy. And calcium interferes with phosphorus. So the one way to improve this would be to, reduce intake of foods high in calcium, supplements that have calcium in them. We talked about a liver formula. Yeah. Right now, really for the next 3 months, I would do some other formula that doesn't have calcium in it. I would just cut back that supply. It's so easy to get calcium without trying. Yeah. And it interrupts. It lowers the penetration ability of other minerals into the cell.
Hi, friends. I hope you're loving the show. Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. If there's one word that makes me feel really intelligent, it's photobiomodulation, better known as red light therapy. Photobiomodulation has been clinically shown to increase energy, circulation, increase testosterone production and workout recovery, hair growth, even the improvement in the depths of fine lines and wrinkles. You actually don't have a lot of reasons not to incorporate red light therapy into your home. And not all panels are created equal, which is why the panel I recommend to my family and my friends is LightPath LED, for the following reasons. This company continues to evolve their technology, including up to 5 wavelengths in each bulb. They include a 3-year warranty. This is one of the most robust in the industry. And they also have pre-programmed frequencies to add the benefit of pulsed light to the body. And most importantly, after-purchase support so you know how to best use your device for your specific needs. Now, what does the evolving science say around pulsed light? Pulsed light yields benefit to the mitochondrial health, leading to increased production of cellular energy, thus improved outcomes. So say it with me, let's mine the mitochondria. So check out their beautiful new website at LightPath LED and use code BeautifullyBroken, all lowercase, for a discount and checkout. Now let's get back to the show. Remind me like our major nutritional sources of calcium from food, because I'm paleo, obviously there's no milk in my diet. It's pretty grain free. It's pretty vegetable forward, grass-fed beef, fish.
Yeah. It's most likely going to be the green leafy vegetables for some time that you can just reduce. This is a great example of how foods that are normally considered good for you, and therefore a diet that we're so attached to or attracted to, is not going to serve us in a certain period of life.
Sure.
And it's amazing, because otherwise we would never know this. Yeah. We would never know this. We could spend $2,500 in blood and we wouldn't see this for what we spent, $199 on this. And I'm sure Freddie will have a discount code for you guys too. So even less. And this is why you want the map and you want it multiple times throughout the year. So yeah, this is good. So moving on, we actually have thyroid function here. And what it appears is not what it actually is. This is where it comes into, you need someone that really knows their stuff when they look at these tests. This is why we have a practitioner course out now where people can go and get certified. So it's finally done, finally ready. It was private. We're just giving away to certain doctors that we're working with, but now it's ready. So your potassium level shows elevated because your body's retaining it. That's why the calcium to potassium ratio shows low. I would say that we could get on potassium supplementation. They'll talk about that in the consultation. One of the nutritionists will talk about dosage and how often and how much, but I would drastically increase potassium just as much as possible, really. Because 2% of people on a daily basis get enough potassium.
Wow, it's that low.
Yeah, 2%. And then those 2% of people got it on one day of the week. They have a 2% chance of getting it the next day. You have to continually consume it each day. So it's really, really key for muscle contraction, adrenal function, a number of different things. Even supports deep, slow wave sleep. So a lot of really good, it's one of my favorite supplements and one of our best sellers. That's upgraded potassium. So,
and where are you looking on here for thyroid function? Tell me which section.
Yeah, this one right here, the significant ratio.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Beautiful.
So we have that. And then now we're looking at zinc to copper. Zinc to copper is one of the most fascinating. But before we get to that, let's talk about this one that's connected to thyroid function, which is adrenal. It's one of my favorites to look at. So with this one, you're doing really well there, frankly. What I would do instead of only looking at test results, and we know each other, I have a good idea roughly of what diet is, but I'll ask, what is your salt intake like right now? It's pretty good, pretty solid.
I think it's good. I just probably in the last 6 months started to do sea salt with a little iodine in there as well, which I hadn't done for probably 13 to 14 years. It had been a long time of just sea salt. I do salt food heavily and I crave salt on most things. I am not a sweet person, but I always am like, if I make a soup in the Instapot, I'm like dumping that salt on there for a little while.
Yeah, well, that's good. So we should probably get into the salt myth and how, and I'll just say that if you're out there and you're having a salt craving, indulge it. And that's probably like music to so many people's ears. Indulge it, indulge it, indulge it. I don't have time to give you the full dissertation for anyone listening on why this is the case, but what I would say in probably about a minute, I can kind of whittle it down to the studies that told us to not eat salt, where we have to unlearn. And again, the smartest people are great at unlearning and relearning, right?
Evolution and practice.
Exactly, right? So what I'll ask is that you unlearn anything that you have negative about salt, because it was the basis of the spice trade that ruled the world, that made travel a thing millennia ago, right? So with salt, what is the right amount? Well, the minimum that I see most people doing well on or optimally on is 3,500 milligrams. RDA is a joke for most things in the US.
Yeah.
It's a joke for iodine. So Japan eats about 100 times more iodine on a daily basis.
100x.
100x. Guys, I know we think America is the greatest place on earth, but Japan lives way longer than we do.
Yeah, they do.
It's pretty cool. We should probably emulate. What do you think? No, we shouldn't emulate anything they do. No, we shouldn't do that.
America.
Yeah. So instead of eating a bunch of sea vegetables that are really hard to find, we have a really big dose, big compared to our wimpy little USA one. And I love the US. Don't get me wrong. I'm super thankful to be here. However, our nutrition standards are garbage, obviously. We have like 1 in 3 Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to fix. We have a big dose of iodine and upgraded iodine. We have iodine. Again, all these minerals are in our super absorbable form. Instead of absorbing about somewhere between 5 and 25%, you'll absorb nearly all of it, because you don't even have to use your stomach to digest it. It gets into the red blood cells. So the iodine goes a long way. You can experiment for yourself and see how much you need and how you feel and things like that. But people generally really like it. It's the one supplement we make on a note that you want to put directly in your mouth because it binds with chlorine. Chlorine renders iodine inert. So it protects you from chlorine. It shows you how bad chlorinated water is. If iodine's going to essentially give up its life to protect you from it. It's wild. So yeah, going back to sodium to magnesium, your ratio here, it's really, really fascinating to hear what you're saying about salt. But Big Sugar, they realized that people ate a lot more sugar when they ate less salt. So they said, hey, you know what? Let's run some studies. And then that's how we have people, doctors included, people that are hugely influential to the general public saying, hey, eat less salt. I had someone close to the family die because they were told they were in the hospital. They're swelling up. They had a number of different health issues, and they told her, no, we got to cut salt out of your diet. Yeah. How stupid is this?
Stupid.
I know it's inside maddening. In my mind. I was just thinking, this was almost like an aunt of mine.
Yeah.
She had worked for my dad's company and was part of the family.
Yeah.
Part of the family. And I just couldn't believe just how, I was like, let me change one thing. She's about to die anyway.
Yeah.
You guys clearly she's getting worse and worse and worse since she's been in your care.
Yeah.
Let me just drive this part of the process. And of course, it was back home in Louisiana. They're just they don't, it's tough. It's inertia. So conversations like these need to be shared. If you like what you're hearing, give Freddie a like, and definitely share this episode with a dozen people and have them share it, because this is so essential. It's elemental. It's fundamental to life. She would be alive today, 100%.
Mm.
Her ankles were swelling to the size of just grapefruit, melons.
Yeah.
Her whole body suddenly swole up that way. And when you don't have salt, you don't have electricity, you don't have vitality. Your heart quite literally sits in a bath of sodium and potassium, and that reaction causes it to beat.
Mm.
God, how are we not testing for this? How do we not know this in the medical field?
Yeah.
How are we ignoring this? So looking at salt, it's a big function of adrenal fatigue. Your numbers are really good here. I would say continue to salt. It shows as a little elevated because I think you just need B6 like most people.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about how much magnesium you're taking offline or things like that, but just to save time so we can get through more of this. But zinc to copper is a hormone balance. And we talked about hormones earlier and how minerals are such a key part. This is a key area. Zinc is very masculine in a good way, very healthy. Copper is very feminine. What I mean is you can give any person, male or female, the more or less of one of these, and eventually over time, if you megadose it, you'll change their personality.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it, and we've also worked on it, and people have become easier to be around. And too much zinc makes you overly analytical. Too much copper makes you ungroundedly creative, which is a feminine aspect at the extreme. So you can imagine how if you put a couple together, you put two people together in a relationship, and one is either male or female, incredibly ungrounded and creative. So in their creativity, what that looks like is they start a bunch of projects and they don't finish them.
Yeah.
And they and then you have someone else that's on the other end of the spectrum, and they're so analytical that they probably have perfectionism and they can't really even start something.
Yeah.
So part of them is getting triggered by how easy it is for the other person to start, but also even more so, they're better at finishing things.
Yeah.
So they're how could you start all these things and not finish? It's really a clash.
Yeah.
And you can go from one extreme to another by eating food super high in copper for a long time, by eating food or not. Yeah. And then by supplementing zinc a ton. So I know you guys probably heard me mention this earlier. Test, don't guess. This is a great example. This will save your relationship, possibly. I'm not kidding. This is an understatement, if anything. It's that important. Between this, sodium, potassium, this is, God, just all the emotional turmoil that you can save yourself from just having this balance. That's huge. So right now with yours, Freddie, your levels, your ratio is good for a man. You want to be a little higher in zinc than copper anyway. It's just going to help you be like healthy, masculine, sort of show up, be decisive, create structure, make people feel safe, like all these things, be able to plan things and whatnot. Still have some creativity though. So you could actually supplement a little bit of copper, or you could do something like our peak thyroid that has a balanced ratio of zinc and copper, which you can absorb at the same time. People kind of get confused by that. Your body needs both, and yet you can use copper to push out zinc in extreme doses. So if you just halt the supplementation of one and supplement the other. Anyway, I'll just pause there and say, if someone needs more detail, this is what consultations are for. And then, so does that make sense? I know that's a lot.
It's a lot. The one thing when I got this, I'm like, there's a section on here that says toxic ratios.
Yeah.
So then there's another section, which is fascinating. And I assume there would be some insight into, and it looks like I've got some decent things going on. Yeah. But if you had to look at the toxic ratio field and just pick out one thing to talk about, what would you mention in there? Because
sure,
I know that's always fun as a consumer. The "what's wrong with me" button gets triggered a little bit.
Yes. So the "what's wrong" portion, we'll skip all the things that look good there and say you need more selenium. You need, in relationship to mercury, you need a little more zinc. This is why I'm thinking peak thyroid would be really good for you. And then, it's not like you have to throw away your other supplements. Keep them. Like the shelf life of most supplements is multiple years. Like you keep retesting. And granted, like that's if you have some of ours that really work. Like I would just, I don't know, give your other minerals away or something, or just put them in the back of the shelf, because you want the tools. Now that you have the map and you have the understanding, you want to use tools that work. You don't want to use a dull saw to saw down the tree now. So selenium will help you push out mercury. So looking at your toxic element section by itself, we see mercury over here, Hg, as, any amount of mercury is something to be concerned about. Any amount of any of those heavy metals, even if they're in the quote reference range, is still something you don't want.
Yeah.
So we have some aluminum, we have some mercury, we have some arsenic, we have some things to work on.
Yeah.
The mercury being by far the worst offender there.
And even though, because it's in a reference range that says acceptable,
right?
This might be, what we're saying is we can have we can have some hiding toxicity levels because of the ratios of zinc to mercury, selenium to mercury going on in the body.
Yeah. So yes, and just that with heavy metals and testing with hair, what I will say is with blood, you would miss lead completely after 30 to 32 days. Even you could have the biggest lead exposure ever and you won't see it in the blood anymore, which is wild. And
your body's trying to take care of you. It's trying to get it out of the place where it's going to do the most harm.
Exactly. So this is why blood is a poor place to test for heavy metals. It's a poor place to test for minerals. Your blood is your body on its best behavior, really.
Yeah. So, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Thanks, body.
I know, right? And so it's like, hey, terrible, you're going to sweep this under the rug, and it shuttles it into your tissues like hair and skin. Yeah. So we measure your hair and we go, hey, you got it. And you test your blood and you go, I don't have lead. And you're like, yeah, you do. If it shows up in your hair, do you have it? Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Your blood is mission critical. It delivers all the nutrients throughout your organs in your body. So, of course, it's going to, like you said, clean it up. Cleanup crew comes in, pushes it out. As you get healthier with a hair test, you'll improve your mineral levels and you may see more heavy metals come in. That does not mean that you've had some exposure. It means that your body is healthy enough now to release it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Barton, we have friends coming over and they're at the gate. So because I want to get into product details for upgraded formulas, I want to hear a little bit more about the process of building a program over the long term. Because Again, I don't believe this is a one-off test situation. I think it's something you commit to for a time. We didn't get toxic in a month or a season. We got toxic over 40 years.
Great point.
30 years. So I think that what we'll do is we'll go ahead and it'll seem like no time at all for the people at home, but we'll pause and we'll just probably do a second part and we'll release these back to back because an hour is a great area of content to digest. And then we can get into why we would choose something that has coming from a background, someone that understands the nano level of particles and absorption rates and the cellular health.
Totally.
And I think that'll be valuable to people.
Totally. If you're up for it, what I would say, since I've done this a bunch of different times, give people a starting place, let them jump in, try this. They'll be learning along with us if you're up for that. And then we'll do a round 2, some episode at any point in the future that you want, because getting the info right now is so critical for people listening to this. And I got to add one thing about hair color because it comes up all the time. You can, even though it says, ideally, don't have colored hair. Colored hair will just cause false positives for things like cobalt and tin. Those aren't important. What's super important is that we get your hair as soon as possible so that we can make changes as soon as possible so that we can get your energy up, your sleep, your, all the, if you have chronic fatigue syndrome, if you have no idea that you're having heavy metal exposure, that you have high calcium levels, all these different things, you need to know that now. So that would be my suggestion on that. But this has been an awesome episode. And thank you so much for letting me come on.
Oh my God, we're going to do it again. And I'm excited to dig in personally for myself. So thank you for being a guest. And again, part 2 will be on its way. Friend, you will, no time will have passed for you. On our side, time will have passed. So thank you for being a guest here. Namaste, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've become increasingly aware of the way environmental toxicity affects my body. Now, in the past, I've tested high for mercury, lead, cadmium, glyphosate, and mycotoxins from mold. Now, I know what you're thinking. That is a full bucket. And even worse than the list of toxins was the fatigue, the neuralgia, and the brain fog due to the burden on the system. So luckily, I was introduced to the Ion Cleanse Foot Bath by AMD at a wellness conference. The system uses both positive and negatively charged ions to help eliminate these harmful toxins from the body. So my N=1 experiment? After 4 months, I've watched most environmental toxicity fall by more than 30% through diagnostic testing. So for me, this is a win-win. The Ion Cleanse by AMD is a fan favorite of the podcast because it's safe, it's effective, and it's a non-invasive way to cleanse and purify the body. So as a special promotion, Ion Cleanse by AMD is offering a free 15-minute consult where you can explore your personal needs to see if this technology may be the right solution for you and your family. So schedule your free 15-minute phone consult by selecting the link in the show notes, my Instagram at FreddieSetGo, or FreddieSetGo.com. Friends, this is a heart-centered company. The support team is amazing, and they offer a 60-day, 100% money-back guarantee. That is zero risk for the customer. So if you're ready to purchase, visit www.amajordifference.com and mention the Beautifully Broken podcast as your referral source. Namaste. My friends, you made it to the end of the podcast. Can you believe this is season 4? Wait, don't turn it off yet. Before you go, I have something very important I need to say. There are 2 ways in which we can build this relationship that we've been working on. The first one is to join me on my membership program at buymeacoffee.com/FreddieSetGo. You get early access to all the podcasts, bonus episodes, discounted coaching, and free webinars with thought leaders in the wellness and technology industry. The second way to support this guy right here is to go to FreddieSetGo.com and download the Beautifully Broken Buyer's Guide. This is my ebook. It's a collection of transformational technology, supplements, and courses that have worked for me, my clients, and my family. These are things that I have found incredibly helpful in my personal healing journey, like the Ionic Foot Bath, or Amp Coil, or the Red Light. Most offer significant discounts by clicking the link or using the discount code. Now, please know they don't cost you anything extra, and at the same time, they do support the podcast through affiliations. Friends, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. 5 stars if you loved it, and, well, I guess if you're compelled to listen to this entire thing and leave a 1-star review, I'm going to take that too. If you want to connect with me directly, I spend most of my time on the social media platform known as Instagram at Freddie Set Go. Or you can find me at buymeacoffee.com/Freddie Set Go or FreddieSetGo.com. And lastly, from my vast team of legal internet lawyers, which I pay a lot of money to, the information on this podcast is for educational purposes only. By listening, you agree not to use the information found here as medical advice to treat any medical condition in yourself or others. Always consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. That's all for today. Our closing: the world is changing. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading. Remember, while life is pain, putting the fractured pieces back together can be a beautiful process. I love you. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel.
American Giant makes great clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, and more right here in the U.S. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, code STAPLE20.